What's up, people? Where'd he go? Wednesday afternoon. Literally is noon. It's like 86 degrees, humid. Actually slightly cooler than yesterday. We're in some kind of heat wave warning thing here. It's very humid, muggy. That's what's making it awful. Yesterday I think it got up to 91 or something, the temp, but the real feel, the index, was like 109 at one point. But I'm cooling off today. Had some storms come through. I think more are expected over the next couple days. Get down into the 70s. Although it's still gonna be really humid. It was so humid. It's so warm today. I saw my cat breathe through his mouth for the first time ever. He was panting after I played with him. It was only like 10-15 minutes of playing. And, he was panting. He quit after a few minutes after we stopped playing. But that Minty's hot. Cat's pretty rare. Pretty rare to see your cat pant, breathe through their mouth like that, like a dog does, with their tongue hanging out. But they do it to cool off. So, see if I can add a little bit to a topic I was talking about the other day out here, the Bitcoin and the debt, and the world debt. So, see, people know the whole world is in debt, right? Like if you go to any of those debt clock websites, you can see like every country is in debt. The United States, the most by far. We think, who is they in debt to? How can the whole world be in debt? It's easy. It's simple. So the world is in debt to whoever holds all the money, because money is a debt note. Right? It's the barter system. It's a ledger. It's pretty much saying I did this much labor, I traded it for this, and this is my debt note where I can now have a claim to somebody else's labor, the same amount of labor. So that labor owed is a debt. So the world is in debt to the people that hold all the money. So, I mean, even you, like me and you, like if you've got some money, like if you've got, $500,000 savings account or something, your retirement money or something, we're in debt to you. If you're an American, the rest of America is in debt to you for that $500,000 worth of labor. If you were to retire today, we owe you that much labor and work and things. You can use that to purchase it. So that is who the world is in debt to. We're in debt to each other. It's just a barter system. We're in debt to each other. And you can see how it becomes so disproportionate between classes of people. And harder and harder to pay back. Because there's fewer and fewer people hoarding the most of it that it's owed to. So it's diluting the value of it, right? So now it's like we all owe this one guy. Say like one guy is holding like, $50 billion. That's a lot of debt that we owe. Like that's a lot of, you know what I mean? Like we got to do a lot of work to provide that guy $50 billion worth of labor. And then plus, we need our own money. We need our own labor for ourselves and everybody else that's doing it. So it's like, not only do we need to do enough work to keep up ourselves, we need to do an extra $50 billion worth just for this one guy, That is it. That's who we're in debt to, man. You're in debt to anyone that's holding money. In America is the most disproportionate, right? The bigger the debt to the country is, the more you can see the separation in class between the poor and the rich. It's that simple. The bigger the debt of the country, the larger the gap you're going to see between classes of people. The smaller the debt, the more equal everybody will be. And if you really think about it, how a barter system works, you'll understand why that is true. We'll get to something. Let's take this for an example, right? A big one now is, you can see immigration right now in the United States. It's always a big topic in the United States. I mean, it's extra hot lately, but it's always one. It's one of them topics. And the truth of it is this: you're lucky. If you're an American citizen, you owe the largest debt of any other citizen on earth. You have to put in more of your labor goes to somebody else than to you than anywhere else in the world. So if every hour of work you do, you might get 5 minutes of it or something worth of that value goes to you, and the other 95% of it goes to the debt, to the people that have way more money than everybody else. So for every 1-bedroom home that you can buy, they can buy 10 10-bedroom homes or something. Like, it's just disproportionate, right? So that debt is owed by anyone who's a citizen of the country. That's your legal tender for you. That's your ledger. That's the ledger we all agree to. So if you were a citizen of another country and wanted to become an American citizen, you are in essence 100% saying that you want to share that debt, that you want to be now obligated to pay that debt. I don't know why anybody would ever want to come to America. It is weird that it seems to be the most sought after place to immigrate to when it's got the largest debt. It would actually be the worst place to come to for yourself, unless you like working to provide for other people that I don't know, that you don't owe anything to. That is the truth. And as an American, you should be happy as hell for any person that wants to come here. You should take them in masses, because you owe this debt, and every one person that comes in now makes you owe slightly less. It's now divided amongst one more person, right? If we got 100 of us here, got 100 people, we got $100 debt, we each owe $1. We bring 100 more people in, now we only all each owe 50 cents. It's simple math, man. Like, you should be happy. All that other shit is noise. All that shit on the news and stuff, and the things that people actually debate about when it comes to this topic and stuff, is just noise. It's to keep you from realizing the actual truth of the matter. It's like irrelevant crap. And it's a very small stuff. The stuff that people focus on is like, it's like, yeah, that does happen, but it's like such a small fraction of the time. It's not something you should focus on. Like, it'd be akin to saying like every time you flew a plane had to go take a flight, all you did was focus on plane crashes, right? Even though they're so rare and don't occur, like, all you did was focus on that. Like, you were so fearful you had to be like drugged or something to get on the flight. Because, like, why would you focus on something? Like, it happens, but it's not. Everything they talk about is blown out of proportion. So the only thing real about it is, the more people that come here, the more people that they're now gonna, when they work, they're gonna earn those debt notes. Those debt notes are worth a certain amount of money back to trade for stuff. It takes so many of them to buy a hamburger, to buy a loaf of bread, to pay your rent. There's a ratio of them that you get kind of per hour on average, and it's worse. It's like a standard of living, and it's if they want to share in that, the more people that want to share in that debt, it raises up the standard for everybody else here. And anyone that comes from a country with less debt to the country with more debt is doing you a favor. Be better off staying where you're at. You'd be better off going to another country with less debt and doing the same amount of work. It would go a lot further. It does. You know, that's why you can. So you make minimum wage somewhere here in the USA. You could probably go to some third world country somewhere and live like a king off of that money, right? It's worth so much more, but it's not worth that much here because you don't. Because what it's worth is going back to that thinking about the book, the ledger, the barter reading that we did. Almost all the labor produced is all owed to these couple of guys for doing their little bit of work. You see what I'm saying? We overpaid for that little bit of work to these few people. Like, it's way, like, we owe way so much on that like, in order to get the things we need, you're going to have to do a hell of a lot of work to include that bill in with it. But that is how it works, man. That is debt. That is that debt clock, man. And it'll get to a point where it's just too much. Like, it'll get to a point where it's too, like, you know, where these couple thousand people are owed so much that the rest of the world just won't be able to actually provide that to them and still support themselves. It's like a self-destructing thing. Like, it's a pyramid scheme that'll collapse, basically. Barter system don't work that way. You can't get a couple 1-2% of people getting like over 90% of all the labor owed back to them without corruption. Like, it just doesn't work, man. They didn't, like, it's every debt note is just a direct representation of labor. It's just, those are just a ledger to keep track of labor performed. The only thing that creates true value. Right? So you mean, it's not going to sustain. It's not going to work because that few people don't really provide that much labor. So it'll have to, it's not sustainable. You know what I mean? And really, the reason it is this, that gets that disproportionate, the only way it's possible for that few people to acquire that much of the labor, at least what's accounted for in the ledger that they've done and performed and owed back that much of the labor, the only way it's possible is through corruption. It's through counterfeiting money, printing money. There's a system that they use to do it where they acquire things that produce real value, right? Like property, land, factories, businesses, things that actually produce things and produce value, like real value. And then after they purchase them, when they when the more money gets printed, the value of those things rise because they dilute it. which makes them even harder to obtain now, right? And as time goes on, they don't care that the money that the money keeps losing value. They own all the actual real stuff of value. So every time the more value the money loses, that just means that they're getting more and more owed to them, right? The way the debt clock works, it's in debt. So the worse, the higher the inflation, if you're a 1%er, means the better you're doing. It means the more money that is now owed to you. That's exactly why there is inflation, because all this money is owed to a small person. The whole population owes it is in debt to a small somebody, rather than it being spread out and even and kind of more equal. So inflation is good if you're in the 1%. Inflation is your friend. You would encourage it. Because the more you acquire, the further the gap gets, the higher it goes. And that's what they do, man. But yeah, hopefully that makes some sense. Help you a little bit, a little more understand into how that works, like how money works and why a lot of people work hard and still barely get by. Well, some other people seem to, sit around and play video games all day and shit, and not necessarily, but you know what I mean, like hardly do anything, and living in mansions in Beverly Hills. And I mean, there's some differences to that too, because the ledger gets more complex, where we as people value certain labor at a higher rate, say per hour, than other labor. Like we might say doing this is worth this amount, do an hour of that work is equal work to an hour amount of this work, so that's enough for that to exchange for that. But this work is way harder. There are way few less people that can actually do it. Like, it's the supply and demand of it, so it's worth twice as much per hour, 3 times as much. So there's that too that we're not touching on, that factors into things. But it's not enough to equate for the differences. You can go back in time to when the debt was smaller and see how those gaps were actually much smaller too. Where like there might have been a point in time where the boss only made 2 to 3 times as much, the guy that owned the company, than his average employee. And now it's probably like in the hundreds or something, makes 100x over them or something. So it affects that as well. I mean, that's still always, you're going to have that. And that's natural, because like a lot of that is true. It might only be, everything is supply and demand, man. So if something's really common and easy to produce, it's not going to be worth as much as things that are really hard to produce and more rare. There's just no way for it to be, or you would run out of the rare stuff, because everybody would try to you just can't. It's just natural stuff. It's like energy. It just flows. Like it's currency. I know it's currency. It just flows in a natural state when it's fair. But it's corrupt. So, but I have to get back to my job. Wage slave. Need to go start busting my ass, and because there's a couple guys here that we owe a lot of money to. So peace out, people.